This video deals with the complex task of creating questions. I say complex, but it isn't really that complex, as question construction simply follows the guiding principle that all sentences in English follow, that of SAV, the key to English. This is something that is often taught in isolation, but the idea of this video is to see all the possible applications of this key in order to create clear question structure in English. If we put that into practice, the most common situation can be seen in the present continuous, which demonstrates this key perfectly. Let's take the verb to speak. If we use the key, we can see I as the subject, am as the auxiliary, and speaking as the verb. If we negate this sentence, we can see the negation on the auxiliary, and then the question structure simply inverts the auxiliary and the subject. This is the most common situation that we will find in the English language. If you remember that English has 12 structural tenses, 10 of those 12 function in this exact way. So let's take a look at some of the less common applications of the English key. Some of you may be thinking about the present simple structure in English, and that is our first example. As you can see, or rather not see, the auxiliary in this tense is often invisible. This element is easily revealed when we negate the sentence, I don't speak, and this helps us create the question, do I speak? We can talk about this as a less common application of our English key, where there is not always a visible or audible auxiliary, but by negating it we can reveal it and invert it with the subject to create our question. There is another case that complicates things a little, and that is when it comes to the verb to be. This is the verb that in many languages simply doesn't live by the same rules as other verbs. If we look at the present simple of be, we can see that it can be negated as a verb and indeed inverted to create a question. It is the only verb that functions as both auxiliary and verb at the same time. So I call it a black sheep, the one that doesn't quite function like all the others. Looking at the other less common situation where we don't always have a visible auxiliary, let's now turn to the past simple or preterite. Like the present simple, the affirmative version doesn't always include a visible or audible auxiliary, but negation will reveal it, allowing us to invert it when it is time to create a question. Again, the verb to be is a black sheep. It can be negated directly without using an outside auxiliary, and thus can be inverted with the subject, as was the case with the present simple construction. You might be thinking to yourself, I know other verbs that can also function as auxiliaries. To do, for example, to have. Now these words tend to function either as verbs or as auxiliaries, but not both at the same time, as to be does. Let's look at to have. The present simple construction of to have does not include an auxiliary in the affirmative version. This sentence might also be constructed using the present perfect tense, using auxiliary to have and the verb to get, giving us the exact same meaning. Despite this identical meaning, there is a difference in how we construct the negative versions, and thus questions, using these tenses, as the auxiliary will not be the same. In the present simple version, we can see that we use do as our auxiliary, and in the present perfect construction, the auxiliary is have, and the verb is to get. The word have functions either as verb or auxiliary, but not as both at the same time, as we can see be does. The word do follows the same pattern as have. It functions either as a verb or auxiliary, but not both at the same time. So there you have it. The construction of questions is in the end relatively simple. You simply have to know how to apply the key in a few different situations. This clearly takes practice, and that is what you need in order to master this important aspect of English.